Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So we are only like 4 months away from the 2025 draft in late June, which is absolutely crazy to say. And when looking at it, these junior seasons in North America and even pro leagues are starting to come to an end, at least the regular season. When looking at college hockey, there's only like 5 to 10 games left for most teams, as well as the OHL. There's only like 15. There's playoffs as well. But yeah, we basically have most of these guys' draft years in the books, and I haven't done an updated prospect rankings since I did a top 15 or top 20 in mid-December before the World Juniors. So I got to update this shit. We got our top 25. Then probably a month and a half from now, I'll do a top 30, then a top 40, and then eventually a top 50 right before the 2025 draft. And I'm not going to lie, although I think you should watch this video all the way through, the 2025 draft is looking kind of underwhelming. I'm not going to lie. We still have that top four where there could maybe be some stars. But yeah, we thought 2024 was going to be a relatively weak draft compared to 2023, and at the time we thought 2025 was going to be legit, but 2025 is looking like a pretty weak draft. Not 2022 levels, but yeah, there's not much. If you don't have a top 4 pick, even top 8 pick, you're gonna probably not get that much of a blue chip guy. But still, we're gonna go through this right now. We're gonna spend most of the time talking about the top 4, top 8, but we're gonna do the full top 25. Let's get into it. Up first, Matthew Schaefer. I still have Matthew Schaefer. I had him number 1 in mid-December. He's been great at the OHL level despite dealing with mono to start the season, and then obviously got hurt at the World Juniors. But even in that one World Juniors, the 4 periods that he played in the World Juniors, he was fantastic. He's just like the perfect modern number 1 defenseman in the NHL. 6'2", amazing skater, extremely high IQ, can play defense at an extremely high level, and he's so goddamn young for this draft class. He has a September 2nd birthday. You look at guys like James Higgins is like November, Porter Martone's October. He's almost like a year younger than these guys, and he probably is the best player just right now, not even just projecting into the future. He's a beast. He's a beast, and I think although the injury, it's not like that concerning. He broke his collarbone. It's not like he blew out his knee or has some kind of back injury like we're going to talk about with one of these prospects. He's going to come back and be fine. Hopefully he can return. I don't know how the Erie Otters are looking in the OHL, but yeah, this guy was extremely hyped up coming into the OHL. He was the first overall pick. Didn't kill it offensively his first season, only 17 points in 56 games, but yeah, he had 22 points in 17 OHL games before that injury. His floor is honestly like a good two-way top pair defenseman, I'd say. Like if he's anything below a top 50 defenseman in the NHL, I'd kind of be surprised. His ceiling, I'm not saying he's going to be Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, Miro Heiskanen type, but he has a legit chance to be a top 10 defenseman in the entire NHL. You just love what you see from Matthew Schaefer. And this season, he has without a doubt been the best prospect when looking at the current. In the future, number 2. We got a new number 2, though. Previously, it was James Higgins, but I'm switching up on the Long Island native. Going with Michael Misa. Interesting story with Michael Misa. Gets exceptional status. 56 points in 45 games. You think that this guy's going to be one of the best prospects of the entire 2020s. Last year did kind of plateau and regress in terms of his points per game. 75 points in 67 games. But this season, he has been insane. He is having one of the best OHL draft years, point blank period of the 21st century. 46 goals, 56 assists, 102 points in 48 games, over 2 points per game, almost a goal per game. And yeah, the talent was always there. The production just didn't really line up with it last year. Saginaw's an amazing team, but they're an amazing team in part because Michael Misa is such a stud, just does everything at a very high level. Not sure he has the potential to be like a top 10, top 20 player in the entire NHL, but similarly to Schaefer, he's going to have a very high floor considering the way that he sees the ice and just plays both ways of the ice. But he can be a legit franchise number 1 center. I think that's definitely possible for Michael Misa. And as a result, he checks in at number 2. Number 3, James Hagan still. You just continue to want him just have a dominant stretch, whether it's at Boston College, whether it's at the World Juniors. He's been very good at both levels, but a lot of it coming into the season and midway through the season was built on his draft year -1, where he was so good for the U.S. national team, put up like Jack Hughes numbers and set the record for the U18 World Junior Champion or World Championships when he had like 21 points in 7 games. He's been very good this season, and I think that he still has maybe a higher ceiling than a Michael Misa because I think he just is a little bit more talented in terms of playmaking, but doesn't have the well-rounded game and is a little bit undersized compared to Michael Misa, where I'm going to go with Misa. Higgins, still, like Misa, can turn into a franchise center. I think that he's most likely going to be a solid low-end number 1 center, most likely around point per game. But yeah, still a very good prospect. Might not be number one anymore, but definitely should go top three. At number four, Porter Martone, pretty much the consensus number four, I think, at this point. I think a lot of people are drawing this conclusion as well. Monster numbers in the OHL this season, going at like 1.8 points per game. He's 6'3". He's already like 205 pounds. He probably might have the highest floor among the forwards in this draft just because of that build. But the skating is a little bit concerning. At the World Juniors, did not play that good. They didn't play him enough. But yeah, just watching him up close, he was a little bit slow. Again, he's 6'3". He doesn't have to be some burner in terms of speed, but I think the skating might hold him back a little bit. But if this guy has a legit franchise center that he's playing with, easily can go for like 40 and 40. Easily. He's still extremely talented, and definitely, if he falls out of the top five, that would be absolutely ridiculous. Porter Martone is still a very good prospect and can play make at a high level. It's not like he's some goal-centered, goal-oriented guy that can't create. No, he's very skilled in his own right, but I think at this point, considering he's a winger, considering the skating concerns, I think he does check in at that number four, but a pretty safe number four in terms of who comes after him. At number five, Caleb Desnoyers, just a very high floor, maybe a little bit of a low ceiling, but still a guy that you like a lot. When looking at him, he was the first overall pick in the NHL Draft. First season, 56 points in 60 games. Right now, 30 goals, 38 assists, 68 points in 45 games in the QMJHL. I think he projects as a high-level second-line center, which I know sounds pretty disappointing. It's at a fifth overall. He's my fifth prospect. But yeah, I could see him maybe being a low-end number one center just because I think he can be so good defensively, plays the game the right way, extremely high IQ. But yeah, at number five, compared to last year when I had who did I have at number five? I think I had Artem Leshinov, who I think can still be a number one defenseman. It is a little bit underwhelming and falls off a little bit at number five. Next up, number six, Victor Eklund, brother of William Eklund, has been very productive this year in the second tier Swedish league. 21 points in 33 games. That's very impressive. I always reference this. Michael Brandstad-Nygaard last year, who went 15th to Detroit, had 18 and 41. He's a very good prospect in his own right, but just putting that in context, how productive he has been. William was playing in the SHL in his draft year and just killing it. He's not as good of a prospect as William, but I would say that he maybe has he has a higher motor than him, as well as as prospects, a little bit of a higher floor, considering he is that absolute wrecking ball, kind of like a Swedish Ryan Leonard, if that makes sense. A dog. He's not that tall, but he just goes into the dirty places and produces at every level at World Juniors this year. 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points in 7 games. Yeah, he's just does everything at a very high level and should be a very, very effective top 6 forward for wherever he goes. Next up at number 7, this guy is rising a lot, and I like him a lot. Radim Mrtka, playing for the Seattle Thunderbirds of the WHL. Started out in Czechia, then went over to the WHL. 6'6", right-handed, and putting up a point per game. 27 points in 27 games right now in the WHL. It is very encouraging to have that size, similarly to like a Dmitry Simashev back in 2023, but actually producing. Simashev didn't even produce like the MHL and Russian juniors, but Mrtka is looking like a very solid puck mover, despite being, or they like overcoming. Maybe you think of a 6'6" guy being kind of clunky. That's not the case with Mrtka. He's a very good skater. He's very responsible defensively and has offensive potential. In terms of a ceiling, I think he definitely has probably the 5th highest ceiling in this draft. Maybe Roger McCrean, who we're going to talk about very soon, might be on par with him. But yeah, outside of that top 4, if you're trying to hit a home run, Radim Mrtka might be your pick. This guy could be a monster at the next level. Next up, Anton Frundell, playing much better of late ever since he got the full-time role at the second-tier Swedish league with Victor Eklund. They play on the same team. He has 6 goals, 6 assists, 12 points in 22 games. Like a lot of the other prospects I'm going to talk about, just a well-rounded guy. I don't think that he has that potential that we maybe saw last year and 2 years ago. He was very hyped up. Has not quite produced, and the tape hasn't quite shown that much. But I think he can be a very good second-line center. And at 8th overall, I think you'd probably take that. Most likely, Roger McQueen, number 9, going to be one of the more controversial prospects in this draft because he's barely played. He apparently has a back disc injury, similarly to a Caden Lindstrom last year. I was high on Lindstrom. When he plays, he's a monster. When McQueen plays, he's a monster. He had 8 goals, 3 assists in 8 games to start this year. Last year was around point per game, 21 goals, 30 assists, 51 points. It's gonna be tough. Again, 6'5", 6'6", has all the potential in the world, But after what happened with Lindstrom last year, I kind of overlooked his back injury, and now McQueen is dealing with nearly the same thing and hasn't played yet. Hopefully, he can come back, but it's scary. I can't have him top six. Again, in terms of his ceiling, him and Mertka probably have the fifth and sixth highest ceiling in this draft, but the potential for serious back injuries given his height and his just what he's hurt right now, it's definitely too concerning for me to potentially use a top five pick on. Jackson Smith, number 10, 6'3", very good offensively as well as defensively. A modern defenseman akin to a Matthew Schaefer. 40 points in 52 games right now. Very silky at the blue line despite being that big. Could potentially be a low-end number one defenseman. Probably projects out to be a solid two-way top pair guy. But I mean, 10th overall, you'll take that. I'm pretty high on Jackson Smith. Some people have him like top 7. I can understand why. He has been so good at WHL this year. Next up, 11, Carter Bear. When looking at Bear last year, very productive in the WHL, 57 points in 67 games. This year, taking it to another level, 37 goals, 39 assists, 76 points in just 46 games. Has been the best player on the Everett Silvertips. Yeah, Silvertips, I believe that's the name. Silvertips with a guy like Landon DuPont, who's killing it in his exceptional status here. But Carter Bear's been the best player on that team by a decent gap. 6 foot, can see every single play on the ice, has great anticipation, and has a pretty high drive, pretty high motor. I could definitely see him ending up being a very good first liner. He definitely has a lot of offensive potential. Next up, Lyndon Lakovich, 12th. Are we at? Yeah, we're at 12th. This guy is an ideal power forward, 6'3", 6'4". He is hurt right now, but when he's healthy, he can potentially be like a 30-30 guy at the NHL. He has taken massive strides this year compared to last year. He had 39 points in 31 games before he got hurt. Last year, only 39 and 68, mainly because Moose Jaw was just such a wagon last year. He was lower in the lineup. He's really assumed the role as that star guy, and they stunk because they went all in last year and they won the WHL. But yeah, he was able to produce at a very high rate, and teams absolutely are going to love this kid. Considering his size, he has the potential to be an elite first liner. Again, 30-30 guy in terms of potential. He's definitely within the top 10. Jake O'Brien, 64 points in 61 games last year. This year, 26 goals, 46 assists for 72 points in 52 games. 6'2", very high floor with a guy like Jake O'Brien. I could easily see him go top 10, and he's a June birthday, so he is one of the younger prospects in this draft. Just your ideal potential second line, two-way guy down the line. A very intriguing prospect. I have him at 13. 14, Justin Carbonneau for my French Canadians. QMJHL guy. Last year, 31 goals and 59 points. This year, 36 goals, 33 assists, 69 points in 48 games. He is a wicked shot and is one of the better skaters in this draft, point blank, period. If your team needs an elite winger to pair with the center, this guy could easily be a very good goal scorer at the next level. It's going to be very interesting to see how he develops within the QMJHL. Kayshawn Atchison, this guy will be, if your team drafts him, he'll be your favorite player on your favorite team. This guy is a dog. He will lay you the hell out. Go watch Kayshawn Atchison hit highlights, and you will not be disappointed. But it's not just the defensive tenacity and physicality. He has 39 points in 48 games this season for the Barrie Colts. You know, I don't really like the Barrie Colts that much. But yeah, he's very responsible defensively, has taken big strides offensively, and yeah, just has that dog mentality in him where he's not like that. I think he's like 6'1", 6'2". He's not like he's some 6'5" beast, but he plays like he's 6'5", 6'6". Should project to be a very, very good second pair defenseman, but also can maybe have some offense, maybe be a 35-ish point guy. Really like Kayshawn Ashton a lot. Cam Reed, OHL offense defenseman that projects to probably be a second pair offensive defenseman. 44 points in 53 games this year for Kitchener. Very good skater, high IQ, good mobility, good movement. It's just your standard, probably second pair offensive defenseman that gets you 35 to 40 points. Nothing too special to Cameron Reed, but that's not a bad thing. Still, probably has a very high floor and should develop nicely. Should be a nice ad for any team's defenseman prospect pool. Benjamin Kindle, when looking at Benjamin Kindle, 60 points in 68 games last year, 83 and 51 this season. If you're looking at a riser that could potentially shoot up, it's Benjamin Kindle. He's akin to two Washington Capitals that were drafted recently in terms of Tarek Parasak and Andrew Crystal. Not the biggest guys, a little bit undersized. Kindle's only like 5'10", 5'11", though, and not the best skater, but the offensive potential, the offensive feel and playmaking is there, where I think you take a risk top 20 on this guy just because he has been so productive and the tape is so impressive with Benjamin Kindle. I like him a decent amount, but I understand why maybe some people would be a little bit lower on him. I had Crystal like top 15 in my 2023 drafts. I was lower on Parasak, though. Parasak's been very good yet again. It's WHL. Benjamin Kindle. It's going to be interesting to see where this kid goes. I'm not really sure quite at this point. Malcolm Spence, 18th, has fallen a decent amount, had a very good draft year, -1, 62 points in 66 games, very high motor with this guy, and I think he's a lot more NHL ready than a lot of the other prospects and has a higher floor than some guys. But yeah, the offense just hasn't really been there that much. 21 goals, 31 assists, 52 points in 48 games. Still impressive. But again, we're talking about Benjamin Kindle, 83 points in 51 games. Not quite as impressive. But yeah, still 6'2", high pace, high motor. It's definitely more so if in this range, it would be a team that like just wants more of an NHL ready guy that doesn't want to take a risk on a big time project. Yeah, Malcolm Spence should be an NHLer, should be an effective middle sixer. I'm just not sure the tools are there to turn into an elite first liner that would justify a top 15, top 10 pick like we maybe thought coming into this season. Joshua Ravensburger, our first goalie, checks in at number 19. Yeah, 6'6". Someone might reach very, very high in him, akin to like a Sebastian Cossa back in 2021. That pick's looking pretty solid, though. Cosa's been developing very well. But yeah, he has all the physical tools to turn into a pretty elite goaltender. And as a result, he's probably going to be the first goalie off the board in this year's draft. Next up, Cameron Schmidt. When looking at Cameron Schmidt, very productive this year, 59 points, including 34 goals in 45 games. The only problem, he's 5'7", and I know I don't discriminate against the height because guys like Caulfield and DeBrincat have panned out despite being undersized guys. Those guys were a lot more productive than, say, a Cameron Schmidt in their draft year. You look at Caulfield, who set the U.S. National Team Development Program goal record, and DeBrincat had 51 goals, 50 assists, 101 points in 60 games in his draft year. So Cameron Schmidt, if he was 5'10", 5'11", probably would be a top 15, top 10 prospect in this draft. But the height is a little bit concerning. Still has the offensive potential to be a really good second liner, or maybe even a first liner. Just can't quite put him there when he is a little bit undersized. Not saying that's the end-all, be-all, but yeah, I think 20 is a fair spot for Cameron Schmidt right now. Next up, William Moore. I'm still decently high in William Moore. It's just a bad year for the U.S. National Team Development Program. Like, he's the best player, and yes, maybe he should be playing better relative to expectations, but they kind of just stink this year. He's still 6'2", 175, 180 pounds. He needs to get up to like 185, 190 once he's in the NHL. But yeah, if he can do that, if he can be more consistent, he's shown flashes throughout the year of not greatness, but like of a top 10 pick caliber, and that's kind of what he was expected to be coming into the season. I'm still holding out hope. I think the lack of production is more so because the U.S. National Team Development Program is just having a massive, massive down year. And I would definitely take a risk on a guy like this at 21, 22, considering the potential that we see from time to time. Just got to get him to be more consistent, and hopefully once he goes off to college, he can get coached up and be a little bit more consistent, put on some weight. Next up, 22nd, Braden Coots. Kind of reminds me of like a Walmart Constellinius. Just does everything at a very high level. Nothing special in terms of offensively. 21 goals, 27 assists, 48 points in 47 games right now. He's a captain of the Seattle Thunderbirds, despite being a draft-eligible guy. That's very impressive in terms of his leadership. But yeah, Walmart Constellinius could be a very, very good third-line center. And I guess if you're a contender, and again, you don't want to reach for the stars in terms of I keep on butchering this, a project, Braden Coots can be a very solid effective third liner for you down the line. 23rd, we got Logan Hensler. Disappointing draft year. There's no denying that. 11 points in 25 games. He's an October birthday. He's pretty old for this draft. Was solid at World Juniors, but wasn't really required to do much offensively. He was kind of the number 5, number 6 defenseman. And yeah, that's just my thoughts on Logan Hensler. Like, he can be an effective two-way, second-pair guy, but I just have not seen the offensive potential this season when you watch him of a guy that can be a true top-pair defenseman. It's not like he's just not elite offensively or defensively. He's just kind of solid. And again, at 23rd overall, if you can get a very solid second-pair defenseman, you're going to take that and run. But yeah, relative, considering we were having debates like him or Schaefer midway through last year, or the end of last year, it's been a kind of a disappointing draft year for Logan Hensler. Still should be a first-round pick. Still a lot to like with his game, but nothing that really wows you with his game. So as a result, I have him at 23rd. 24th, on the flip side of that, Ivan Ryabkin has wowed people. He wowed people last year in the MHL when he had like the third highest ever by draft year -1. He had 58 points in 44 games, only behind Michkov and Demidov. Nobody was saying he was as good as those guys, but he was the next Russian forward that was going to be a top 10 pick. This year was a disaster, though. Started in the MHL, only had 8 points in 9 games. He's getting like healthy scratched at the MHL level, which is wild. Now he's come over to the USHL. He has 8 goals, 13 points in 11 games for Muskegon. Muskegon, what's their mascot? Muskegon. Oh. It's like a Lumberjacks, Muskegon Lumberjacks. Boom. Yeah, he's been very good in the USHL, but he's a guy where he just fluctuates. He has great, like a William Moore, his motor is just not quite there. The consistency is not quite there. The offensive skill is definitely there, and I think someone will probably take a chance on him in the first round, but there's a lot of red flags with a guy like Ivan Ryabkin, and it's going to be very interesting to see where he ends up going. I still have him within my top 25 just because you did see it last year on full display, and if you watch him, there are really moments of excellence. It's not consistent. Lastly, we got, that's Ryabkin again. We got Jacob Ice Wozniak. When looking at him, last year set like the record for a draft year -1 Swedish junior production. This year started off slow, but he's producing yet again at a very high rate in Swedish juniors. He has 48 points in 32 games, 6'3", very, very impressive shot. If you give this guy a good center at the NHL level, he can produce at a very high rate. The rest of his game still has a decently long way to go. But again, at 6'3", people have him like outside of like the top 40 at this point. I still think that he can be an effective second-line goal scorer, third-line goal scorer. Definitely has fallen off relative again. He like outproduced Lucas Raymond in Swedish juniors as a draft year -1 guy. He's definitely fallen off a decent amount, and I have him and Ryabkin just because what I saw in their draft year -1s was so impressive that I'm still rolling with him as of right now. But yeah, that's the full top 20 or top 25. Jesus, this is like a 21-minute video. That top 50 is about to be a full hour or something like that. We got Schaefer, Misa, Hagens, Martone, Denoyer, Eklund, Mertka, Frundell, McQueen, Smith, Bear, Lakovich, O'Brien, Carbonneau, Atchison, Reed, Kindle, Spence, Ravensburger, Schmidt, Moore, Coots, Hensler, Ryabkin, Ice Wozniak. Let me know in the comments. What do you think about it? Who would you move up? Who would you move down? James Hagens, I hope he goes first overall. That'd be awesome for the for Long Island to represent, but it's probably not going to happen. Matthew Schaefer's probably going to be the odds-on favorite, especially if it's a team that more so needs a defenseman. Like if the San Jose Sharks are selecting, they're obviously going to go with Matthew Schaefer compared to James Hagens or Michael Misa. But yeah, it's definitely not locked by any stretch like the prior 2 drafts where we know who was going first overall. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting to see. There's going to be a lot of chaos on draft night. I think Schaefer's likely to go first. I don't know who would go second, third, fourth, fifth. It's all over the place. There's not a ton of like tiers. There's definitely that top 4, but then there's not like a clear 5 through 10, if that makes sense. I'll be seeing the next one. Peace.